So today we're doing pile height adjustment on this inaitwa AK duo, right? But before we start, let me introduce you to the gun. Foot of the gun, presser foot, or some people call it pusher. Top lever, bottom lever. This is the scissor opener. Then right over here we have this wedge that goes up and down. We call it the scissor closure. On this other side, this is our brake. Then this is our large gear. Motor, trigger switch, then you have your on and off switch. So before doing any adjustments, your gun should always be off and unplugged. So now to adjust our pile height, the first step is to come closer. We need to move this part to the next notch. So I don't know if you can see that clearly. So we need to move this part to that part. Then we loosen it. So come closer and get that movement. So we're going to move it forward, then tighten it back in place. Then and make sure it's a tight fit. Now this is how you check for the pile height of your gun. We are going to measure from the pusher or the presser foot to the edge where the scissors just cuts. So from the factory, these are set at 17 millimeter. Now if you are adjusting pile height, 17 millimeter at this point will give you an overall tuft of about 14 millimeters. What we want to achieve is about a 20 millimeter pile height. So we are going to set this distance to about 23 millimeters. And then we'll finally end up with 20 millimeters as the final pile height. Next, I'm coming in with my long nose pliers, and we're going to loosen this just a bit. Not too much, because if you do too much, now you have to disassemble the whole gun to just replace that nut. So like so, and then I'm going to tap on this. You'll see there's a bit of resistance, so I'm going to tap on it while checking the overall measurement. So you see now we are at 23 millimeters. Now when we do the actual tufting, this will produce a 20 millimeter tuft, right? Okay, so now let's tighten it back. And also make sure it's a tight fit. You can check it again, still at 23 millimeters. Remember, we're measuring from here to the edge of the presser foot. So like so, that's 23 millimeters. The final tuft will be 20 millimeters. Now, after doing any adjustments on your gun, make sure you do a full rotation to see whether there is some resistance in the movement. Like here, there's a bit of resistance with the scissors and the needle, so we need to create a bit of separation. I don't think if you can see that. We need to create a bit of separation between the scissors and the needle groove so that the movement is so smooth. So what we'll do that, how we do that is we're going to take off the handle and access the scissors, and then push the presser foot back a little bit to create that space between the scissors and the needle groove. slide out. So upper, this is where there is that slight resistance, so we need to create just a bit of separation between the scissors and the needle groove so that they are not rubbing against each other and the movement is smooth. That nut, make sure you don't lose those accessories, then slides out just like that. So there are several ways to go about it. There's that scissor rivet that is creating a bit of that height difference, so we can sand it down just a bit so that the scissor sits a bit lower, or we can adjust this one. This is the most preferred, because if you tinker with this one for the scissors, scissors will become loose. So we're going to see whichever works best. So we take out our scissors, and what we need to access is this part. So we are going to also loosen it just a bit so that we can access this rivet and then sand it flat. So again, I'm going to loosen it, and then the pusher just slides out. Simple. So now you have access to the pusher. This is the part that we are going to sand flat. In this case, I happen to have a grinder. So if you don't have a grinder, an angle grinder, you can just use your file. So we are going to sand this down flat, and then on the scissor rivet, we're going to just do a light sanding. As you can see, we've just taken a hair of the rivet so that it's just flat on this side. Now what we want to take, the bulk of the material is from this rivet. So as you can see, we've sanded it just flat enough, but we are not close to the rod itself. This was before, and now after we've sanded it flat, it will now sit flat within the groove. So that creates that separation that we need. So we're going to put back the pusher in the same steps. So the pusher just slides in, and this is the nut to tighten it in place. Now, before we tighten this nut, because we are going to adjust the distance, the pile height distance, we put back the scissors. And if you don't know how to put back the scissors, there's the bottom side, which is flat, and the top side is a little bit countersunk. So this is the side which goes on the top, like so. And then the screw, put it back together. I want to check if it will cut the yarn. Okay, so again, so scissors are working correctly. So remember, the distance we're going for is 23 millimeters. So this is just 22.5 or something. I'm going to tap the pusher just a bit. While checking until we are 23 dead on. So Again, we are 23 millimeters from the edge of the pusher to the edge of the needle, where the needle, not needle, the scissors, where the scissors just begins to cut. So from the scarf on the scissors to the edge of the pusher, 23 millimeters. Then we tighten that. So that's not going anywhere, and we are 23 millimeters. So let's put it back in place and see if it's rubbing against the groove of the needle. You can see it's now moving smoothly. There's no friction between the scissors and the groove of the needle. So that's what we wanted. Now we can start putting everything back together, and then we finish up with the final adjustment. The washer goes in first, then the bottom lever and the nut to fasten it. This is the smooth motion that we were looking for. We are going to put the handle block back in place. And that should just snap in place like so. Also cross-check the movement before you put the fasteners in, and everything is smooth. Remember, this is our scissor closure block. Before you start any adjustments on your gun, make sure that your scissor closure moves freely. We can focus on adjusting the scissor closure. So move the scissors to the topmost position like so. I'm going to just tighten it a bit, and then with my long nose pliers I'm going to hit. I want you to focus on the scissors until they just completely close. So then we can tighten the scissor closure. We can do a slight adjustment on the opener so that when it opens, the scissors are opening wide enough to fill the groove. To adjust the scissor opener, we are going to loosen this just a bit, and then with I'm going to use my long nose. Make sure the scissors are resting in the lowest most position like so. Then I'm going to push it just a bit higher. So just a few millimeters up high to make sure that the scissors are open wide enough to fit the scissor groove, or the needle groove I mean. So that should do it for this one. After doing that, we also cross-check the movement. Everything goes as smooth as it should be. I'm going to do a little test with the yarn just to see if the scissors are opening and closing as they should be. So if they're not cutting the yarn completely, then either the scissors are not opening wide enough or they're not closing completely. So again, that's what should happen. For the final adjustment, we need to adjust the pusher or the presser foot back to its original position, meaning we need to move this presser foot just up high, and by that we're going to just adjust the bottom lever. We're going to lengthen the bottom lever to lengthen the bottom lever just a bit. And remember, when we lengthen the bottom lever, also the scissor closure will be affected. So before that, we can just make that loose. And also open that. We're just going to push it forward a bit now. then tighten that and put the nut in place. Now we also adjust the scissor closure before we can do the final test. So the scissors in the topmost position. That's too much. Now when adjusting the scissor closure, you see this is closing just a bit way too much. As you can see, I don't know if you can focus, there's a lot of overlap between the two arms of the scissors, so we need to reduce the overlap just a bit, because this overlap is rubbing against the groove of the needle. Everything should move as smooth as that, and we are ready to test it out on the cloth. As you can see, we are on 20 millimeters, and this is as far as you can go for the AK duo tufting gun. If you push it past 20 millimeters, now you know what will happen. So we are right on 20 millimeters, and that should work for now.